Hello everyone and welcome along to your Sunday night edition of the TII podcast. My name is Craig Dennett and I'm your host this evening as we look back over Rangers' return to domestic action following the international break. To look back over the game against Dundee United at Tannadice, I'm joined by Tommy McIntyre and Ross Chalmers. Tommy, how you doing?
I'm good, thank you. Yeah, it's a Sunday. There's 3 points already in the bag, so that's pretty positive, I suppose.
It's the start of the podcast as you mean to go on
that's
there.
It. Yeah, that's it. I've set the tone exactly the type of mood I'm in tonight. So let's get off that particular topic.
Ross joined by Ross. How you doing, Ross?
Yeah, I'm good, thanks, Craig. Yeah, very much the same as Tommy. I'm glad to see us get 3 points again. It feels like it's been a while because of international break. So, yeah, and a good positive mood. Let's put it that way.
Absolutely. Well, let's get stuck into the game. We'll speak about all the big talking points. We'll speak about specific players. Bijrami and Igamane will be two that definitely come up. But please do give your thoughts in the comment section. Please do ask questions in the comment section. We'll bring up as many as we can and make sure you're part of the discussion as we go along. But Ross, starting with you first of all, just your reflections on the 90 minutes today.
Yeah, I think the
Is that a surprise? Is that a surprise of a question?
Have you been unputted by that particular question right out the gate?
I know. It's one of those ones though where I'm thinking about the first half, and I thought we were good in the first half, like really, really positive. I think we've seen a bit of a bounce from a sore defeat a couple of weeks ago, and then I think the second half we struggled at times. So yeah, there is a bit of balance there overall. I think Rangers done enough today to get the 3 points. I didn't think to look at the other side. I didn't think Dundee United were great, to be honest with you. I think the way they set up really helped us in that first half, and to be fair to us, we took advantage of it. They changed their shape a little bit on the second, and I think they got into the game a bit, and maybe we struggled at times with that. But overall, I'm looking at the positive more than the negatives. Of course, we get a good result of that. It's a tough place to go because Dundee United have started the season well. Really important 3 points based on the result last week. And there was some real positives throughout that, and we're going to come on to it in this podcast, I'm sure. But I thought Hamza Igamane, when he came on today, was superb. And I think there was good individual performances across the park, the likes of Jefte, Barron and things. So, look, they've responded in the right way. I think that's the way the manager put it as well. That's the only way you can respond, with a difficult result. So I'm trying to cling on to the positive at this point. There's a lot to go. There's a long way to go. This is something for us to build on, but yeah, I thought it was a good result, and hopefully more to come in the coming weeks.
Yeah, Tommy, a few comments here describing how people viewed the game. CGM55 saying, evening another mildly painful watch. Kenny GBY says, evening lads, a win is a win. Something just not clicking just now though. Can we just play our best 11 and stick with it for a few weeks? We'll definitely come on to talking about the starting 11 and Fluke Comon's tendency to not go what every single other person thinks the starting lineup should be. So where did you land on today's performance? Is it mildly frustrating as it's been described there, or was it a bit better than that?
We played well for the first 25 minutes, and then it was so. Some of the same problems that we've seen previously. So, yeah, listen, great to get the 3 points, great to keep a clean sheet. We'll speak about Igamane, etc., as Ross has said. But I mean, I don't want to sound negative, but I'm not getting ahead of myself. It's Dundee United, right? It's not Real Madrid here. And we put in a good 25 minutes, got our goal, looked like we could get a second. Cyril Dessers should, right on the stroke of half time, and bury the game. As it is, second half, pretty much matinee show that we've seen before, which is us getting pressed a little bit and starting to get nervous. So yeah, it's a positive result with bits of a positive performance. Yeah, there you go. That's pretty much where I'm sitting with it.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I thought we started really well. To be fair, and I was one of the many that seriously questioned the starting lineup when it came out an hour before kickoff. Ross, I think you were in the same boat. I think we're all in the same boat, to be fair. But starting lineup, no Czerny, obviously out with illness, but we didn't know at that specific moment that he was out with illness. Igamane and Bijrami on the bench. We had Lawrence, Dowell and Cortez all in the starting lineup. How far away was that from one that you thought from any of the lineups you could have predicted for today.
Yeah, I certainly didn't expect to see Kieran Dowell in the starting 11 today based on, Barami coming into the club last week. I thought he was a dead cert to play, so that put Kieran Dowell more down the pecking order. So yeah, I was surprised by that one. Unfortunately for Václav Černý, he picks up an illness and a bug or whatever, these things happen. So that is frustrating because I think I would have liked to have seen him on that right-hand side, and I think that would have given us a little bit more balance out there because I thought at times Kieran Dowell struggled. Now, I think there is a lot of question marks around Kieran Dowell, but I'm not going to be too harsh on him today because he's playing out of position. And I always think playing out of position, you're kind of trying to do your best for the rest of the team. It's very difficult for you to stand out, so I'll give him a pass on this one. But yeah, I was just disappointed at the start of the game not to see Barami, to be honest with you. I mean, this is a boy that's been signed for 3.5 million. He's played 2 international games back to back, and it's funny. He said in his press conference on the Friday, saying, I'm ready to go. And the manager comes out and said, "Look, we're just going to look at him in training." I thought it was those coy ones from the manager where he was like, "Oh, well, we'll see how it's going." The fact that I thought Barami was so out there and saying, I'm ready to go," I was expecting to see him to playing. So that was disappointing for me. At the end of the day, it's very difficult to question the team when your team gets the result. The manager has picked the lineup, he's picked that starting lineup, and we've got the result today. And I think it's funny that Tom Lawrence was the one that grabbed that first goal because I think he is probably the player you would have taken out for Barami. And I think maybe in that second half, you're maybe seeing that they maybe don't work together in the same team because I thought Barami, when he came on, was quite quiet. He couldn't really get into the game. We'll give him a bit of time, of course, but I think he'll suit more in that central role. But yeah, overall, other than that, the team was probably what I'd expected it to be honest with you. It was just that Kieran Dowell in there on the right-hand side. Thought, is there anything else we can do? I actually thought he might have went with Dujon Sterling if that was the case because he's played him out before, and that energy that Dujon Sterling brings to the team, I thought that would be good in an away game at Tannadice. But he went with Kieran Dowell. Like I said at the beginning of my answer, we got the result today, so it's very difficult to argue against it. But yeah, maybe some strange selection choices in there from the manager, but he got the 3 points, and that's all that matters really.
Yeah, I think we've got a bit of pronunciation bingo going on here. We've had Barami and Bajrami, and we've had Igamane, and we've had Igamane and Igamane. So
Igamane as well. That's it. Yeah, you've got
let's
it.
See how many more we can fit into the rest of the podcast. Tommy, why? Firstly, why do you think Philippe Clement, he was kind of laying the breadcrumbs a wee bit in his pre-match press conference in terms of saying, we'll see how, I'll keep going to call him Bajrami, I'm going to keep going with that. So we'll see how Bajrami looks in training for his second training session, but he's only had one with the team, so he was kind of laying the groundwork, I guess, to say he wasn't going to start. Why do you think Philippe Clement is so cautious about that when we see so many other teams and so many other managers, especially when their players have been playing on international duty the week before, saying, right, they're ready and they can go straight in?
It's evidently just his style, in terms of he's looking at integrating the player, the pressures of playing or a debut for Rangers, what that means, what that brings, the tendency to write players off really quickly if they don't hit the ground immediately running. And then maybe it's a fitness thing as well. You saw him talking about Cortez. Listen, he's going to start, but he's not going to get the 90 minutes, obviously, that type of thing. I don't think he helped himself with the doesn't know teammates' names and all that type of comment, but it's evidently just his style. He wants to take a little bit of longer time to bed players in. Some of that could be the condition that the players come in that isn't, public knowledge. His fitness could be a little bit behind. It could be anything. He could be carrying a little niggle that he doesn't really want to force. And then it turns into something more serious, and then he's off for 6-8 weeks or something like that when he's really needed. So it could be a multitude of things. I do absolutely understand the frustration that it drives. I'm there as well. But manager's choice, and he's chosen it today. Back to the point, everybody takes a little bit of a beat when you get 3 points in the bag. But yeah, I think that you would expect next time that Bajrami, and I'll just go with a hard J there, right? Because I'm in that type of mood as well, right? So the Albanian, right, might start. But again, it's a long season, it's a team game, all that type of, cliche stuff. But you don't know. Ultimately, the manager chooses the team based on all of the information that he sees in front of him. That could be link-up play because he's not had a lot of training sessions. It could be a niggle. It could be the fact he's not integrating as quickly as he wants. It could be minutes in the legs. It could be anything. Ultimately, you put him in the matchday squad and then you put him on the pitch. So that can only get better. And thankfully, we're not sitting here talking about he looked like a really exciting signing, and then we found out he was out for 3 months. So, take some of the positives there.
Yeah, I've got a question later on about are we clutching at straws, and I think we're all proving that we absolutely are clutching at straws even this early in the season. But Ross, Oscar Cortez started, and it actually looked like a bit of a pre-planned. Cortez will play the first 45, Bajrami will play the second 45 piece. But CGM 55 says that I think taking Cortez off was a mistake. Him and Jefte looked good. I get it was pre-planned and all that, but he was doing okay. Ian McCutcheon says missed the width of Cortez in the second half, stretched United in the first half. Were you impressed by what Cortez offered on his return? I think he's not played much football for Rangers yet, but he's impressed in spells, I think, but he's obviously not had that consistent run yet.
Yeah, I think we can all see clearly that Oscar Cortez is a good player. It's been so unfortunate that he's been ruled out with a couple of bad injuries now that we haven't seen the best of him yet. I think for the first game back since he's been out for a while, I think he showed a lot of good touches. I think there was one in the first half where I think Jefte plays the ball inside to him and he plays it back through and Jefte's away, and it was just a delicate pass through the lines and Jefte's away. So that was really good to see. There was also the other side of his game, which I expect from a younger player, maybe inexperienced. I think defensively he could be a wee bit better sometimes. I think he loses runners. But there was also one point where we were down the left-hand side and I think he has to lift his head. And if he lifts his head, I think it's either Dessers or Lawrence coming in at the penalty spot, but he decides to take a shot. And it was one of those ones I think that the commentary team picked up as well and said, that was a really good chance for us to potentially get a shot at goal. So these are wee things that will develop over time. But yeah, I really like Oscar Cortez, and I have to say I think he does work well with Jefte. I think I had a little bit of concerns about Jefte in pre-season, maybe positionally, defensively, but actually I thought today was great. Really, I thought both sides of the game, Jefte done really well. So I'm hoping there is a bit of relationship there. I think Ridvan will push Jefte this season. I think they'll both play a lot of minutes. But I think Oscar Cortez has shown that he can work with either of them now. I think that's really encouraging. So yeah, I can understand the frustration around bringing Oscar Cortez off in the 45th minute, half time, whatever. But I think because he did come back in that first game of the season at Tynecastle and he was out again for 4 or 5 weeks, I think the manager is right on this one to take his time with him. He had 60 minutes in a bounce game against Motherwell. He's at 45 minutes today. He's likely to start next week against Dundee. He might go for 60, 70 that game. So you're trying to build him back up for the long term of the season. But yeah, I was really impressed with him again today at times. There's wee things he can work on, but I expect that from a player, his stage of development. And that's what we've got to be doing, right? We've got to bring these players in that have got levels to go to, and you're hoping they find that with us. So yeah, really encouraged by him.
Yeah, I think
just to cut across that very, very quickly, just for the listeners, the watchers, we will get round to doing a series of Ross gives pronunciation pods, just to make sure that everybody's upskilled on the absolute right way to say people's names with the right inflections. Because I think it's required at this point that everybody gets on the same script as Ross with this stuff.
Can't wait to talk about Raskan in that second half.
Bring back Club Brugge.
I'm sticking with Jefte at the moment. So I think the only concern I've got with Jefte is he seems to get booked in every single game. So he'll be missing every fifth game that we play, but we can deal with that, I guess, as it comes round. Tommy, a lot of people after the game, or I guess even during the second half, were saying it's a bit strange that I don't even know how to pronounce his name. We'll go with the Albanian. Came on at left wing instead of at number 10, where he was at, where a lot of people believe he was bought to play. What did you make of that move? We saw him. If anyone watched this sort of across the international break, he played in a few different positions for Albania during that. But was that a strange move, do you think, or was that purely because Lawrence had scored a goal and was actually doing okay, I guess, in that first half?
Exactly that. I mean, it shows that there's a little bit of flexibility across the kind of positions anyway, but Lawrence was playing really well, but you want to give somebody minutes too. So you say, right, can you shift out left? It's relatively comfortable for you. I agree his best position's in the middle and he'll probably play more there. But you're also giving a boost of confidence to Tom Lawrence. He's playing really well and you don't want to hook him off. You want to say, right, show me. He should have probably had two. So yeah, I think it's simple and as complex as that, in that I'm going to definitely play the Albanian. And I definitely want to keep Tom Lawrence because for once he's playing well. So I might as well get the maximum value I can out of it. Just to be really clear that I do not back Tom Lawrence in a Rangers jersey. So yeah, that's as belligerent as I'm probably going to get with that particular point. There was no more complexity round about it than that. Although I do think the worry obviously is you see Bajrami out wide, you don't see the best of him. And people, might be snapping judgments on the basis of he looked a little bit lethargic. It was a little bit play it back and safe and stuff like that as well. But there was also enough to see that he's really comfortable on the ball and he knows how to treat it. And if you get that in the centre of the park, and listen, it's no bad thing, just to be really clear as well. If Tom Lawrence continues on that trajectory and starts putting in those types of performances regularly, and Bajrami finds himself in a dogfight for that jersey, that's not a bad thing for the team and the club because you've got two guys who are then performing and we might have a chance of turning around Tom Lawrence for a profit. So, that's pretty much the tail of that substitution.
Ross, what did you make of Tom Lawrence's performance today? I thought he took his goal really well. I thought if he picked up some good positions, he probably could have and should have had a hat-trick had he had his shooting boots on. But I thought this was more of the type of Tom Lawrence performance I expected consistently when he came through the door, and we've not seen it anywhere near often enough. Do you think it's just one of those ones where he's had a good week and he's going to go back to the norm, or could this be a bit of a launch pad for him to make that position his own? I guess, given he's now got some serious competition in there.
Well, I'm hoping it's a launch pad for him. I'm not going to sit here and think that next week he's just going to go back to being the Tom Lawrence we've seen this season. But yeah, I think Tom Lawrence struggles physically at times. I think we've seen that throughout, especially off the ball. He maybe doesn't give us as much as we would look for, but I have to say, I thought he took his goal really, really well today. It's good link-up play between him and Dessers. I think Dessers overall maybe had one of those games today where he struggled at times, but he done really well for the goal. And maybe Lawrence gets a wee bit fortunate with the bounce back. But look, once he's in on goal, it's a great finish. He dinks it over the keeper, and that I think we all know that Tom Lawrence has that quality. He does. We've seen that before he came to Rangers. He showed it at times here. Again, he's been unfortunate with injury and we haven't seen it as much as we want to. But I think I'm hoping that Barami signing can push Tom Lawrence on. I think Tommy spoke about it there, that if you've got someone right behind you now that is pushing you for that jersey, you're hoping to get, that's going to bring more out of Tom Lawrence himself. So I think he had some good moments. I think you're right to pick out that he probably should have killed the game for us in that second half. I think he has one in the left-hand side of the box where actually if I was going to pick any player on the Rangers team today, it would have been Tom Lawrence to have that chance, and he puts it over the bar. And then that chance that Hamza Igamane pretty much creates himself, plays him through on goal, and he does the right thing, I suppose. He puts it across the goalkeeper, but I think he's got to take that chance. So I think overall, Tom Lawrence had a good game today. Probably the same as Tommy. I don't really want to see him playing every single week as Rangers number 10 now because we've brought Nadim Barami in. I want to see him get that shirt, and I think really I don't think we go and pay that level of fee if Tom Lawrence was the designated number 10 for this season. I think Barami will push him and he will take it eventually, but that is exactly what I would want to see from Tom Lawrence. If he does have someone pushing him for the jersey, go out and say, you're going to have to work hard to get this off me. So he delivered at times today, could have taken a few more of his chances, but it's a positive for him because I think at times this season he has struggled and he didn't play. He came off the bench in the Old Firm. That was a big decision because every other game under the manager he's played, so he decided not to play him last week, so he maybe had a point to prove as well. So yeah, again, building blocks. I want to see more of this from Tom Lawrence because I know he has the quality. It's just getting it out of him consistently. That's the problem we have.
Yeah, we'll come on to talk about Cyril Dessers and Hamza Igamane shortly, but before we do, Tommy, it was something I noticed during the game, and a few people have brought up in the comments in terms of when Dundee United changed the system, we looked a bit lost and we struggled to really counter that in a way, in terms of to regain control of the game. Billy RFC number 1 says they changed system. That's what happened after 30 minutes. CGM 55 says it worries me that the tactical genius that is Jim Goodwin could see his tactics were not working and he changed it, and Clement didn't do anything in response. Our subs, Igamane apart, did nothing. There seems to be a recurring theme with Philippe Clement recently that fans have started to pick up on more and more, that he struggles to impact games during the 90 minutes, apart from if he gets to half-time, and he can probably have a bit of a go at the players. Is it something that you saw today, and is it something that concerns you in terms of being a trend, or a trend that you've seen over Philippe Clement's time in charge so far?
Yeah, it's a good one, that. And again, we need to sometimes recognise that teams can change, and then it makes it difficult for us. And we have pre-existing issues there with that midfield still not settled. So if you actually really step in close to them, they tend to be able to get cut apart. We really haven't settled our defence, particularly centre-backs, communication to the midfield as well, and it creates gaps. And then you've got fullbacks who want to go forward, and so the spaces appear, and they try to exploit that. And it kind of worked quite well. Didn't help that people at James Tavernier didn't have a particularly good game, and it was all a bit kind of broken back there as well. I think in terms of Philippe Clement, yeah, it's a reputation that seems to be starting to stick, that you not get anything in the locker. I don't think that's naturally completely true, right? I think there's tweaks that he tries to make to it, trying to get people to stay out wide, try to get them to actually be more compact in the midfield, trying to get them to kind of go into a block and all that when we're under pressure. You can see some of that. But we didn't naturally get back on top. I think after that 25-minute, 30-minute spell, when they changed the system, we weren't able, and this is maybe where the criticism is, we weren't able to then change it. The manager wasn't able to then change it. The personnel wasn't there to change it, to then say, right, let's get us back to that first 25 minutes. It actually just became a bit of an even game. If Dundee United could have taken a chance, it might have been a really, really nervous one. But yeah, there's definitely a growing consideration around about Philippe Clement, that he doesn't see it, and that he doesn't have the ability to say, that's where the gap is, go in there. Now, again, you need to be really careful in that sometimes it's seen by the manager and they ask them to do it, and the players just don't have the ability. Right? There's definitely still some of that in our squad. And then there's a cohesion thing. I think if we're still seeing that this team cannot react to things and find a way to get back on top come, let's say, I think it was November that Philippe Clement spoke about seeing the best of this team, then that's the best of the team understanding his instructions and also his plan B, plan C, etc. So if we're still seeing the same things, then I think that conversation comes back round to what exactly are you trying to do? And when it's not working straight out of the gate, how do you change it? And how do you change it game by game as well? Because it seems to be it's a consistent style of play. There's nothing wrong with that. Match up your style of play, dominate your opponent, make them play the way you want to. We just don't seem to be able to imprint that for a full 90 minutes right now, or even for a length of time that allows us to completely get the game killed. And that's where some of that's all getting bound up. But I think it's a legitimate conversation to have, and there's a legitimate critique. But I do think the jury's still out, is probably the honest answer on it. Philippe Clement does need to show, though, that he's got the ability to overturn teams in game, not at halftime.
Yeah, Ross, there's a comment here from Cute Kanji that says Clement hasn't once changed his formation during a match in the last 11 months. In fact, not even during a match he done so. He's not a tactician. Stop making excuses for him. Do you think Tommy said it's becoming something that's becoming more and more noticeable? Do you agree with that? And is it a frustration you hold that we're not...
Sorry, before that, I got a right reply there. I'm not making excuses. Cute Kanji, right? I'm not making excuses for Philippe Clement. I think I was quite clear there about laying out that there is a case to answer. So, yeah, definitely not making excuses for him. I'm just always attempting to be relatively balanced, that there is press the big red button, everything must be wrong, the manager must know nothing. A manager who's won titles, right, at more than one club, and already won a trophy here. And the difference between, we need to see more from him. So that's it. I get Cute Kanji's point, fair enough, but I'm not making excuses. So I think I'm right in taking up my right of reply there. Now, back to yourselves.
Ross, over to you.
Yeah. I mean, I was on the podcast with you last week, Craig, and I think I've made it clear that I do have slight concerns tactically when it comes to the manager. I think we've seen that at times. I think today, I actually thought the way that Dundee United started the game surprised me because, and I always try and think of this. I know I'm a Rangers fan, right? But I look at this like, what would I do against us to try and anticipate them, how we reply to that, right? And I think the best way to play against us right now is putting us under pressure like they did in the second half. And I think that's why they got a lot of joy. So I think you have to give credit to Jim Goodwin and Dundee United. They changed their shape and they went for it. And we haven't been able to respond to that at times, and that's going to come. I think there definitely is a bit of worry for me in those situations because I don't really see him trying to change anything at all. It's kind of like, we'll just let the players work this out. We'll keep trying to play from the back, and we continuously get caught doing that today. Now, there's the other side of this as well with the individuals involved here. Philippe Clement can't really do anything if players are loose in possession, because we've seen a lot in that in the second half. We've seen a lot of times for us to break in transition, the ball was breaking down, and Dundee, we really gave Dundee United that like momentum to get back into this game. And I think I've seen that quite a few times this season under the manager. I've seen it last season as well, and that frustrates me because I think we have the quality to dominate these games and we don't seem to do it. So I think I'm not that negative. I think it was Hugh Kanji that said that in terms of, and I don't really believe that he's 11 months here and he's not changed his system once. I don't think that's true. I think I have seen him at times move to like a 3 and things like that and build up. So I have seen him make slight changes in games. But yeah, maybe today he didn't make the changes that he wanted. Maybe he was kind of relying on the individuals to come on and make a difference. And by the way, they did make a difference when Igamane came on. He made a difference to our forward play. We were actually able to build, you were able to play through the lines, you were able to play it into a central striker who could do a bit of everything. He could carry the ball, he could hold the ball up, he could run the channels, whatever. So I think Clement is a manager that is going to rely on the individual to maybe change things at times. You're not going to see a whole system change. But yeah, I think for the long term, I think the manager needs to have a wee look at things, because I can see the chat and lots of people are talking about Diomande, and I'm sure we're going to come on to him. I think he is a player that is suffering under this system, because there's no doubt in my mind, I think he's probably Rangers' best player. I really do believe that, but we're not seeing the best of him. And I think it's because he's playing in a midfield 2 that I don't really think suits him. I think you need to play him higher, and we can't do that in this shape. So it's maybe up to the manager to look at these things. I'm sure he will further down the line. Maybe at the moment he's just trying to get everyone involved, bed players in. But yeah, I can't lie and say that I don't have slight reservations when it comes to the kind of tactical style of the manager, but I'm hoping he works that out as the season goes on.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you saw me saving all the comments about Diomande as we were going along, but I keep teasing that we're going to speak about Igamane, but we're going to push it a wee bit further down the line, because I'm going to bring in, it's a chat that's been going, bringing in a lot of opinions and thoughts in the comments. So let's talk about Mohamed Diomande. Ross, I'll start with the comments and then we can start giving our thoughts on them. So Ian McCutcheon was the one actually that started off the chat. He said, "What is Diomande offering us? To me, he looks well off the pace in his positioning." CGM55, Diomande plays worse with each game. Kyle 1872, Diomande shown nothing for us to have paid €4.5 million. Ian McCutcheon then agreed, said, "Yep, expect better from Diomande, especially since we paid €4.5 million. Rangers on tour. I feel as not bringing in an actual number 6 has had a real effect on Diomande. You get a lot of hard work from Barron, but Diomande needs a security of a 6 to allow him to play his game. Blue bells are blue," says Dio was starting to worry me. I can't remember the last time he played well for a match for more than 15 minutes. It seems to be an increasing narrative, Ross, that Mohamed Diomande is not playing well at all at the moment, and he is struggling. You mentioned that it's potentially the system that's creating that for him, and it's not playing to his strengths. Is that where you feel it is? And do you think Rangers on tour said about number 6 being in there? Do you think that would have made the world a difference for a player like Diomande?
Yeah, absolutely. I have to say, I think some of the comments are harsh. I don't think he's been anywhere near as bad as a few comments have made out there. I think Diomande still shows his quality most of the games. I think something that he's suffering with at times is maybe taking a wee bit too long on the ball. So that's maybe something that has to be worked on. He maybe doesn't have that time in Scotland that he's looking for, and he maybe doesn't have it in that kind of deeper role where he maybe just has to get the ball and shift it on. Maybe he wants to be involved a wee bit more. But yeah, I think he's suffering from the shape. I think Rangers on tour made a good point there. I I think that had to be someone we looked at this summer to get the best out of Diomande. If you brought in a number 6, and then you would play with 2 midfielders in front of that, whether that's a Raskin, Barron, Diomande. I don't think it matters. I think they all kind of suit that role. Even a Sterling, if you want to play him in midfield, that's the role I would play him in. I wouldn't play him as a
I've just
deeper.
seen a call for Stephen Davis to make his return. So
yeah, well, I've said in this podcast numerous times I'd love to have Stephen Davis back, but unfortunately it's gone, and we're all going to have to accept it because I've accepted it. Yeah, that one gets me emotional thinking about it. Yeah, but that is exactly the type of player you would want, isn't it? And then it gives those players in front a wee bit more freedom. I think it's fair to say that we aren't getting the best out of Diomande. And I think it's also fair to say that he maybe has to be shown a wee bit more. You can't just constantly go, well, I'm not being played in my favourite position, so I'll just kind of coast through. There's definitely things he could be doing better, but I don't really think he's a major problem at this point. At the same time, right, I've said throughout, there shouldn't be any Rangers player that is guaranteed to start every single week. No chance. So if the manager looks at it as well and thinks Mohamed Diomande isn't playing at the level he expects, then let's bring in a Raskin. Let's play Conor Barron and a Raskin together, because actually I think the two of them would fit quite well. I thought Raskin actually done well when he came on in the second half again, showed a lot of his energy that we see at times with him, and he kind of showed very similar qualities to Barron, and that they were in the right place at the right time. And I like that from a 2 in midfield, because that's what you need. You need to cover a lot of ground. So maybe that's the route we'll go down for a while. I'm talking myself out a little bit though, because I think the manager loves Diomande, right? I think he's made that clear in certain interviews that he thinks he is a great player and probably one of the players he wants to build around. So look, I think it's fair to question him. I think we maybe should be getting a wee bit more from him, but I don't think this system's really suiting him. And I don't want Mohamed Diomande to be one of those players again that Rangers bring in. We can all see the quality, and he doesn't hit it here. Like, I'm sick of seeing players come in and they never hit their level. I want to, provide a system that fits this guy. You can't build your whole team around one player, I know, but I do think he's got a lot of quality. So we should try to fit him in there to get more of that. Whether the manager does that, I'm not sure.
Yeah, Tommy, what's your thoughts on Mohamed Diomande and his form so far, particularly this season and in Philippe Clement's system?
Well, I'm not going to duplicate what's just been said there, other than to say I think Rangers on Tour's comment was probably the closest to the mark, and that Diomande probably mirrors the team. There's definitely more to come from it. There's more to come from him individually, and there's more to come from it collectively. But would you put Mohamed Diomande in the bin or class him as a player who doesn't have any talent, or he's not going to go anywhere? Of course not. I mean, I don't understand how people can get to that from what they've seen. Yeah, he's not been performing at his level best, but he is a very, very good midfielder. Is he the best player at Ibrox? Not entirely sure. I'd go all the way to the dance floor with Ross on that one, right? But he's a good player. And the point being, you want these players to come through the bad patches, and you want them to find the right place in the setup that Philippe Clement picks them, because he is one of that new generation at Ibrox of sellable assets, or hoped for sellable assets. So, I mean, I don't have any grand fears that Mohamed Diomande will somehow not be a good player for us. I think there's ways around there, and there's just more to come from it. It speaks to a wider truth that our midfield is still in flux. In particular, midfield to that number 10 position is still in flux. We're talking 6s, we're talking 10s, we're talking whatever, right? But in terms of that positioning and who are the right people to go in there, Barron's come in and grabbed his jersey, engine, athleticism, good eye for a challenge, reasonably decent eye for a pass, reads the game. Is Raskin going to come in? There you go, Ross, just for you, Raskin, right? Quite possibly. You've got that Igamane, Lawrence conundrum now that we've got rid of Cantwell and all that nonsense that went with that particular player. And you're saying, right, how do we build the rest of that midfield out? What's that going to look like? So I think once that settles down, Mohamed Diomande will be absolutely fine and will be somebody who has a starting jersey. That's where we are right now. And there's maybe just a little bit, unfairly fairly is probably much of a muchness, that given the way he started and where we were, and where we still continue to be to some extent, people just expect so much, right? And it's going to take time. Still relatively young. It's going to be up and down. But yeah, he's not one that I look at and go, that's going to be a flop. or that's not going to work, or he'll be playing in the B team and putting out cryptic posts on Instagram, right, anytime soon. So no, I'm not worried about Mohamed Diomande.
Yeah, I think
I don't know where this mood has come from because he won. There we are.
Well, let's keep it going to the end of the podcast then, Tommy. Let's move on to, so this podcast is titled Can Hamza Igamane be Rangers' starting striker? My opinion is we've definitely not seen enough of Hamza Igamane, but the signs are promising. Ross, Cyril Dessers was the one that started today, led the line for the first 60 minutes. I think off the top of my head, he had one real chance where he should have hit the ball about 5 seconds before he actually tried to hit the ball. He should have, if he'd gone across the keeper, he probably would have found the back of the net. But I don't remember any other sort of clear-cut chances that kind of came his way. When he was replaced by Igamane on this, I think it was bang on 60 minutes, he was replaced by him. Dessers looked a bit perplexed by it all and not too happy. What did you make of that reaction, first of all, from Cyril Dessers?
To be honest with you, I don't expect any player to be happy when they're being substituted. I actually don't mind it. I like that in a player, as long as you're not doing anything petulant. You're making a scene or whatever. I don't really mind a player looking and going, I don't really think that should be me. That's fine. I'm not too worried about that. I think Cyril Dessers has scored a lot of goals for us at the start of this season, and maybe he thinks, okay, I'm maybe not having the best of games, but I should be given the chance to turn it around the last half an hour. And I think really up until this point, we've not had an option to replace him. I think that's what's been unfortunate. And I think he's had the benefit of that at times, because there has been a lot of games where I felt he needs to come off. Like, he's not contributing at all, and he's been able to play through it. So yeah, I was going to say I was delighted to see him come off today. I think that's a bit harsh, but I was happy to see the change, because I thought it would be an easy one for the manager, where he would keep Dessers on, because he clearly likes Dessers. Okay, there's no other way to put it. He does like him, and I thought he would maybe bring Igamane on the left hand side. He would move Barami into the number 10. He would bring Lawrence off. I thought maybe Lawrence has had 60, 70 minutes, whatever it was, and that would be the easy change. But that was a brave change from the manager. Didn't think he would do it, and I think we've seen the benefit of that. As for Dessers, before we come to Igamane, because I'm sure everyone wants to talk about him, because I want to talk about him, I think that chance that he has at the end of the first half, that's the real thing that frustrates everyone. Now, he does get a shove in the back, he gets a knock in the back, but I'm expecting my striker there to probably expect a defender behind him, and they're going to try and put him off. I'm expecting them to have enough physicality to hold that off and get his strike away. He's got to be set for that. He's got to be composed enough to deal with that. After that, the chance is gone, and I think that's the real issue for Dessers when it comes to in front of goal and finishing. If he's got a lot of time to think about it, he struggles. Now, actually, Alfredo Morelos was very, very much the same. I've spoken about this in the podcast before. They're very similar to that. If Morelos had a lot of time to think about it, he would usually put it past the post as well, or he wouldn't get the shot off, or he would scuff it. So they are kind of instinctive strikers. But that, I think we've seen at times last season with Dessers as well, that can kill a game. You scoring that just before half-time takes everything out of Dundee United. They go into that dressing room at half-time and they know they're up against it to come back into that game. Actually, you fluff that chance and they think, look, we're still right in this. Let's make some changes. And you've seen that in the second half. Dundee United were like, listen, we've got a great chance to get back involved. The other side of his game as well, Dessers, when he's not off the ball, I think he's pretty poor, actually. The more I look at it now, I know he presses, but he doesn't really ever win the ball when he presses. So I think he's pretty poor off the ball. And actually, the big thing that frustrated me today with Dessers was he wasn't able to contribute much outside of the goal. Now, again, that's a huge moment, big moment. He contributes and we score, so he deserves the credit for it. But after that, there was a lot breaking down with him. Ball bouncing off him, playing the wrong pass. He'd maybe make a run, stop. Cortez would play the ball. They'd complain at each other. I don't see enough from Dessers overall to convince me that he should have that starting striker slot for the rest of the season. And I think he needs the competition. And I'm hoping we have that with Igamane now.
Fingers crossed. Tommy, Ross mentioned it a little bit there in the comments, which is something I hadn't seen really in the narrative around Igamane's sort of performance today. But a lot of people are saying he reminds them a little bit of Alfredo Morelos in the way he was able to sort of hold the ball up. I don't know if we've just been that starved of someone who can actually hold the ball up front, or if it maybe his stature a little bit, and the fact he has the ability to occupy more than one defender at a time is kind of what's coming through there. What did you make of Igamane's sort of 30 minutes and our first proper sight of him on the pitch?
Yeah, I was just composing myself there to give a more chirpy answer on this one. But yeah, I mean, the similarities to Morelos, I'm just going to put that at one side, right? Because he's not done anything yet, right? Yeah. Quite frankly. And I hope if he does get into that stage, it's similarities to peak Morelos and not I can't be bothered Morelos, right? So, but certainly the bits of technique, even when he came on against Celtic in the Old Firm, the bits of technique, you think, oh, there's something there. His control of the ball, his ability to get in front of bodies, his ability to move it. I liked his wee kind of half chance where he gets across defender at the corner, and gets a head on it, and it was pretty good. Looked more dangerous in that cameo than Dessers did all day, if I'm being brutally honest. Quite direct as well, able to take on 2 and 3 players at a time, and actually looked like he's going to get through, as opposed to where Dessers is. You go, right, I wonder when they're going to take it off him. To some extent as well, which may be slightly harsh on Cyril Dessers, but it's kind of consistent that he loses it. I agree with Ross as well that Cyril Dessers, I get my hopes up, all the time, post Ross County. I think when I did the post-match with Kyle and stuff like that, and we thought, he really did well and he held it up and all that. Then you run at an Old Firm game where he's completely anonymous, and then today where he fluffs the lines and stuff like that as well. I mean, great chance to make it 2-0 at half-time. Clinical stuff. To say, right, there you go, one chance, right, I'm away from my bath. I'm happy to come off because I've done the job. Cyril Dessers is not going to get any better at that, right? So I'm insulating myself against that. I won't have my heart broken again. That's essentially what I'm saying. Apart from by Igamane, who's obviously going to be amazing, right? But no, I think he's a young man. There's been a lot of mystique with the way he's come in. Special training programs, getting on the pitch, all that kind of stuff. But what we've seen so far is positive. And how nice is that? A young guy who's come from another country in terms of Morocco, he's come through, and what we're seeing is relatively positive. I agree with as well. It's nice to have somebody who is able to challenge there and come off the bench and say, right, I can come on now, and Cyril Dessers can come out. Right. So the one thing I will say in Cyril Dessers' credit is, like him or loathe him, whatever, he's been shouldering the forward line himself. Right, and he's always turned up. Right, now that doesn't get you out of all the jail cells, but it gets you out of quite a lot, right, in terms of fair play to the guy with that. But the quality level is also not good enough. Is Igamane going to be up and down? Yeah, he's a young player, so it is going to be up and down, and we can't get too frustrated. But so far, everything I've seen of him looks positive, and certainly behind the scenes, the noise about him is incredibly positive as well. He certainly doesn't look as if he's shy about getting about as well, and he's got a bit of a physique to him. And happy there. I'm not sure about the tash, but I really can't say anything because my beard's overgrown today. So I like him. I like him. Let's see if he gets some goals soon though, because that's probably the next step for the striker. He's looked okay in cameos, but he's not actually hit the net yet.
Yeah, Ross, Tommy, I'm going to ask you sort of 2 questions in one here. Tommy picked up on the chance that was the header at the near post, which I thought was really good movement. That was one of kind of 3 moments, I think, where I thought that Igamane's offering something different in each of those moments that I've not seen for a while. I think the first one was when he took the ball down in his chest on a half turn and then played Tom Lawrence through, where Lawrence should have scored. That was the first one. The second one, I think, was picked up the ball on the left hand side, just inside the Dundee United half, and he took it by 3 or 4 players and then laid it off. I think it was to Jefte, laid it off to cross the ball in, and then it was that header. I think those were all slightly different moments where I thought he was really impressive, actually, and it made me excited for him going forward. What do you think he can, as a player, from what you've seen, what do you think he can really offer us as we move forward? And secondly, Fluke once said in his post-match press conference, we bought him this summer because we wouldn't be able to afford him next summer. How encouraging is that to you that we have that foresight, I guess?
Well, first of all, what can he offer us? I'm actually surprised with how developed his all-round game is, actually, from where he's came from. playing the Moroccan league, under 21s for Morocco or under 20, whatever. I wouldn't have expected that level of quality actually, but I think what we've seen so far is his technical level is quite high. Physically, very good as well. I think there was at points where Dundee United were trying to get close to him and he was just kind of holding them off. And I'd really like to see that from a young player that's coming into an environment that would have been difficult. And I think if I'm in the opposing team, I'm targeting Hamza Igamane as soon as he comes on the park, because you think it's a young boy, knows nothing about any of this. I'm going to really make it difficult for him. And he handled it really, really well. So yeah, it looks like he can offer us everything. I think Tommy's right. The next stage is now to see whether he can grab us some goals, because that's what he's going to be, really everyone's going to look at him for. If he's going to play up front, can you hit the back of the net consistently? So that's going to be the next thing for him. And I think that will come with time. But yeah, all round, I thought he was great today. I don't want to go over the top because it was only half an hour. And it probably shows you where we are at the moment. There isn't a lot to look at in terms of individuals, but yeah, I thought he done really well. And yeah, it's a young boy, like Tommy said, coming into an environment that's new to him, different culture. Looks like he's settled in really well. Looks like he, gets on with a lot of the players really well as well. They obviously must think there's a good ability, like good level of player in there, and they want the best for him. So I think in terms of on the pitch, looks really good. In terms of Philippe Clement talking about bringing them in early, that's exactly what the club have to be doing. We have to take risks like this with some young emerging talents throughout the world. We've got to do it. Now, Hamza Igamane is reportedly up to 1.5 million. I think we're seeing that could be good business. We've got to wait and see, but it looks like it could be a good bit of business, and it looks like he can develop. And yeah, like Philippe Clement said, maybe next year he would have been hitting the 5-6 million range, and maybe that's a bit too much for us to pay for a talent like that at that age when they've not really done a lot. Diomande was very similar, if you remember. Clement said in January we had to bring him in now because if it went to the summer, there was probably going to be a lot more interest in him and the fee would have been through the roof. So I like this from the club. This is exactly what I want the club to be doing. Can they do it for the whole squad? Can we just go and buy emerging talent throughout the world, pack our whole team and hope for the best? No, obviously we can't do that. But I think you can do a few of these type of signings every single year. You give them time to develop. You hope they push through, and then you hope they get to a certain level. You can sell them on, and that chain continues to go, or that cycle happens. So, yeah, I like that. That's what the club need to be doing recruitment wise, and that's really encouraging. It looks like we're one step ahead of other clubs here. We've recognised Hamza Igamane as a really high talent. I think he was on one of those striking lists that I read a while ago. It was top 10 under 20 strikers or whatever, and he was number 6 or something like that. Again, I've said before, whoever makes these lists, I don't know, but right, it looked pretty official to me. So that's really encouraging to see. So I'm really excited by this boy. And like I said at the beginning of my answer, I'm surprised with the level. Genuinely, I'm surprised when he came on today straight away. I think the first bit of play he had was down that left-hand side, like you spoke about, Craig, where he's been pressed and he's just holding it off. He's keeping the ball close to him and he just lays it out wide. And I thought, I was sitting on the couch watching it and I was like, this boy looks at a level above I thought he was going to be. So yeah, look, temper expectations, of course, but it's good to actually watch a new signing coming into the club that gives you a wee bit of excitement, because we've not really had a lot of that lately. We may get it for a couple of weeks and then end up getting injured. So let's hope for the best for Igamane. They can kick on from here.
Yeah, it turns out Ross was reading his own list of strikers that he's found on Football Manager that he's made in his notebook when he read that one. So that's why I said that
it was official then. Definitely official. Yeah.
Tommy, let's go. I think Igamane is a player that I'm really looking forward to seeing more of, and hopefully we see more of him against Dundee. But let's go to the other end of the park today. I think whenever we are only ahead by one goal, we're always a bit nervy, and we always have our moments where the other team seem to be piling on a wee bit of pressure and that side of things. What did you make of us defensively today? For me, for large parts of the second half, it felt like we were not on the ropes, but Dundee United were definitely applying a bit of pressure, and it felt like we were doing our best to stave it off. But there were a few moments where it seemed a bit panic stations. Ultimately, at the end of the game, when you look at it, Dundee United had 5 shots at goal. None of them were on target. I think the closest one was obviously the one that got deflected by Barron onto the post. What did you make of us defensively? John Souttar got player of the match, I believe, as well, which surprised me a little bit. But defensively, a third time I've said this in the same bit. What did you make of us today defensively?
Finally, we get there. No, I think you're right. And just before that, maybe I kind of link there to Ross's point. And that's why you, for key positions as well, you go and buy established players like Robin Propper. Now, whether Robin Propper will work out in the long term or not is not my point. It's you buy experience where you need to buy experience, and then you go and take your punts and hoping to develop assets and sell them on at a profit in the right areas as well. So that's essentially where Rangers find themselves, same as any other club, right? There's only like 4 clubs in the world who don't have that model somewhere in their mind. The rest of them have just how they get round FFP breaches. So in terms of where we were, yeah, I think you're right, and I think that's probably the right way to describe it. Sometimes when you're watching a game, and all the listeners and watchers will absolutely understand this. You watch the game, you see a team defend, you go, they're just soaking it up. They're not troubled. Every defender knows their position. The midfield's dropped back and got compact. The keeper absolutely commands the box. All they're doing is taking a wee bit of rest. To use your analogy, it's rope-a-dope type of kind of Muhammad Ali stuff. We never quite feel like that. It's more of a, I just got there in time. It's went down, and sometimes it relies on really the poor kind of play by the opposition. They get in good positions, but they don't have the final ball quality. I think there was some of that. You're right, there wasn't a ton of shots on target. There were some odd moments, for example, where Jack Butland laid it into the feet when we're trying to play it for the back, when we're getting pressed really, really high. And if you're getting pressed on your 6-yard box, just go long. Right? I'm quite comfortable with that. I'm not going to be a purist and have a go at you about it. But yeah, there's a nervousness sometimes. I think as well that comes from, it's quite clear now to me, the last couple of games were certainly targeted on that right-hand side as well with James Tavernier's space. And we haven't quite sorted the movement across, whether that's a midfielder dropping back to accommodate James Tavernier or a centre-back kind of shifting over very, very slightly. Doesn't seem to be working. So yeah, I thought we were not 6s and 7s, but there was a nervousness. And you're always nervy at 1-0 anyway, right? It's a cliche, but also we know that we've got a goal given away in us. So how nice to come away with a clean sheet, because we certainly were getting pushed, and they brought on Louis Moult to try and bring more physicality in that long ball. There was one where he actually a long ball almost beat us, and he was breaking through into the box and stuff like that as well. Just bad touch. I think it may have been offside anyway, but the point stands. To go back to the answer then, yeah, I never felt comfortable with it. I'm delighted we get out with a clean sheet. Not entirely sure I would have taken Souttar as the man of the match or anything like that in any way, shape or form. But we didn't give up tons of chances. We did seem like we could be more solid and more communicative and work more as a team. Again, that comes back to some of that October, November stuff that Philippe Clement was talking about. But unfortunately, I also put the caveat over the top of it that this is Dundee United away. When we came up against a decent team last weekend, we get absolutely done to shreds. So this should have been an absolute easy one, in all honesty, right? In terms of getting an early goal, going for the jugular, killing them off, and then being able to play about and bring people on. What we did find ourselves in was a bit of nervousness because we weren't able to kill the game off, and we managed to get out with a clean sheet because Dundee United aren't a very good side either. Now, I don't want to end in a negative, right? We still got a clean sheet and we won the game. That's fantastic. I'm happy as Larry, right? But let's not walk past exactly what we've seen as well, right? It's 25 minutes and we were a bit ropey at the back as well. So there's still a lot of work to do. But I'm delighted we've got the 3 points. The back line still has some work to do to shore itself up.
Yeah, absolutely. It's interesting when we talk about the back line, because I was thinking today after the game when they were talking about that's the third clean sheet out of the 5 domestic games. Obviously, there was the game at Parkhead where we were all over the shop, but the only other one was a Robin Propper own goal against Motherwell. So we're our own goal away from 4 clean sheets out of 5 games, and yet none of us have the confidence in our defence, which I think is really interesting, and how much you pick up when you're watching games versus what the actual outcome is at the end of it.
I think some of that comes back to the fact that we give up some chances, and we do it more so, or maybe on equal footing. I need to run the stats right, but we cause it ourselves a lot of the time. by sticking to this playing out from the back point, even when we're getting pressed high. Some of it comes down to some of the teams we've been up against are not great, and so the finishing is all over the map, and Jack Butland's made some good saves or whatever it looks like. But in the games where it's really mattered, we've given up goals. That big test. And maybe that's what drives the support frustration, and our frustration as well, when you're going, right, I'd take a 2-1 win against Dundee United, but we've given up a goal if we kept a clean sheet at the Old Firm. These are the types of things that inform people's overall view of the team as a unit, would be my take to that.
Yeah, I think that's fair. Ross, how I found that, I guess it feeds in a wee bit to how we're viewing the defence a little bit, but as fans, how do you think we should be approaching it at the moment? How are you approaching it? Is probably a better way to phrase it. In terms of this season so far, we have drop points away to Tynecastle and away to Celtic, which can happen in a season. It's unfortunate, I guess, that it's happened twice in the first 4 games of the league season. We find ourselves 5 points behind both Celtic and Aberdeen. We, I guess, lack confidence in the team. We're questioning bits and pieces of the manager in terms of his in-game decisions and his substitutions. At times, we're about to enter the Europa League, where we've got a really tough draw. There seems to be a bit of lack of excitement around Rangers at the moment, but also a lack of expectation for us to really do very much. All of that sounds very negative, but as fans, we're always aiming for the highest, I guess, and aiming for trophies and aiming to be competing on every front. How do you think we should? I'm not going to ask you to speak for the fans. How are you approaching this season as we move forward? We're only five domestic games in after all.
You're going to make me sound like a manager here, but I honestly am just taking it game by game. Genuinely, that's where I am at the moment, because that was a sore defeat, 2 weeks ago. Difficult one to swallow, I think, seeing your team, go into a fixture like that and not really have any competitive edge. So I think coming back today, really, I've not thought about any other game other than Dundee United, and we got the result today. And I honestly believe that's the way I'm going to be going forward. I probably won't be as critical of the team through European competition this year, because I don't think the squad we have is ready to compete at that level consistently. So I might give them a bit of a pass when it comes to these fixtures, as long as we don't go in and get embarrassed in this competition. Then I think I'll be okay with it. But domestically, the gap at the moment, from us and the teams that you mentioned, it's there. And really, I just want to every single week to see Rangers winning. I'm not really looking at anyone else at this point. And I know that sounds ridiculous because of the rivalry in Glasgow and in Scotland between Celtic and Rangers in the Old Firm. You naturally look at each other's results, but I just don't think we're anywhere close to that at the moment. I think we've seen last week that there is a gap there, and we're going to have to try and bridge that gap at some point. And I just think we're going to have to do that step by step. And I really do believe that's the way the manager's going to be looking at it as well. I don't think there's going to be... They'll probably do it. I think I spoke about this last week. They'll do it in blocks, won't they? They'll look at this block till the next international break, and it'll be all about getting maximum points in that block. And really, as fans, I think we just have to be that way, because I think if you look at it too long-term right now, the club should be, obviously, but if we look at it too long-term, you just think, long-term, do we believe we're going to win the league this season, or what chances have we got? I think you're going to be down the whole season, really. You've got to just take it game by game. You try and grab onto the positives going into each game, and you go with it, and you hope the team can start to build a wee bit of momentum going forward. That's really where it is at the moment. There's no point in getting too far ahead of ourselves. I think that I'm just trying to look at it from the positive. Look, you've got a good result today. Could have been a better performance, of course, but throughout a season, you're going to have games where you need to grind it out. Unfortunately, we're doing it after a game where you've taken a really, heavy defeat. You'd maybe want your team to respond with a 3 or 4-0 or whatever, but these things happen. SPFL games, you're going to come against sides away from home. You're going to have to dig in and get a result. We've done it, so it's a positive. For me, after this, it's just looking what individuals can we bring into the team to get even more of a positive boost, a bit more of momentum, and you just take it game by game. I really don't think there's any other way to look at it at this point, because I think if we're all honest, we think it's going to be a difficult season. I think we've all really accepted that as a support now. We think it's going to be difficult. we're maybe not going to have the success we want. So I think the best way to look at that is go game by game, try and go out, grab onto the positives when they come. Don't get too low when the negatives come, because we've already accepted it might be a difficult season, and just go from there.
Yeah, I think that's very fair. Difficult to add too much to that. Tommy, kind of second last point before we wrap up the podcast. There's always been a lot of changes at the top of the club this week with the announcement that John Bennett has resigned due to health reasons. What does, in your view, what does that mean for us as a club going forward, and what opportunities, I guess, do you feel that presents to us in terms of whether it be restructuring or a slightly new direction, or maybe just something that kind of helps take us forward in ways that as fans we don't believe the club has been?
Yeah, well, first of all, for myself on behalf of everybody, and this is Ibrox, wish John Bennett a speedy recovery. I don't think anybody listening, watching, in the support at all, whilst they might have disagreed with his communication or the decisions, I don't think anybody would argue with the fact he was a Rangers fan and wanted to be somebody who impacted the club really positively and drove it forward and do the best for it. I mean, that's a given, in all honesty. So we hope for better days for Mr. Bennett, and the fact that he's soon back watching Rangers again, and send that goodwill to him. The club's in, yeah, there's a lot of turmoil there, and it's not a word that I generally default to. I should also stop and say, Ross, hearing that level of pragmatism from you makes me so proud. I'm so proud to see that you've come towards me on that. Don't get up, don't get down, don't get affected by other things. Right, but
I started the podcast potentially saying that Hamza Igamane could win the Ballon d'Or, and then that was my last answer. So
exactly, you've been on a journey. You've been on a journey in this one pod. But yeah, listen, the club needs to sort that out. I think it's quite right to say the CEO process of appointment is taking longer than the club expected. The timeline, you can read into that what you want, whether there was a preferred candidate and then that didn't work out and they're having to go back in. They've brought in external advisors for the chairmanship as well. So yeah, there's a couple of different names in there. I'm sure people will start to go back to previous names as well. But what we don't want is to go in for a long term whereby you're saying, right, the manager's having to shoulder a lot of the forward-facing structural stuff of the club as well. That's not his job, right? It's hard enough with the squad we have, position we find ourselves in, and with Ross. It's going to be a bit of a tough season, in my opinion. He has to get on with that job and win over some of the kind of criticisms and critiques that he's got from the support that we've touched on tonight as well. The club structurally with the investors have to get the right appointments in. I think we've tried our best to go with who was in-house, James Bisgrove, who, I think by and large didn't work out. Then we've had Mr. Bennett, who's had to step down for health reasons. But ultimately, nobody's really seen that big movement forward, right? That big transformation of the club. It's all seemed a little bit bitty. We haven't heard from Karim Varane, the commercial director, either, despite the fact that he was supposed to be stepping forward for conversations. So that vacuum is not good for the club. That vacuum is not good for the communication round about the club. That vacuum is not good enough for the fans. So anybody coming in has to be of a senior appointment level, right? We often talk about managers being, it's not a project manager. You don't want somebody just off the coaching ground, kind of Michael Beale style. You have to get somebody established. The same goes at the top end of the club, right? Rangers boardroom is not a nursery or a project place for somebody to polish their CV. It's for somebody to come in and deliver corporate governance, good corporate strategy, deliver on that strategy, take the club forward. Now, if something gets in my bonnet, it's that we've not done that sufficiently enough recently. And so as the club hunkers down and brings in whatever advisors they have to, they've got to make sure they get somebody who not only knows what they're doing, but carries themselves with the weight and the seniority that is expected from a club such as Rangers when they go in to speak to partners, rivals, governing bodies into Europe. These are the things that matter, and they have to speak directly to the support, and they have to speak well to, and they have to mean it, they have to deliver on it, and they have to face up when it's not worked. These are some of the things that have been missing recently. These are some of the things the club has to address.
Yeah, completely agree. Ross, let's finish on a positive note. Back at Ibrox next weekend. How much are you looking forward to it?
Yeah, I was actually thinking about that earlier because I think I'm lucky enough to cover the game for the podcast next weekend, and I instantly thought about going back to Hampden, and I felt that sense of dread that you do going there. But then, yeah, quickly realised it was back to Ibrox. So, yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. It's been a long time. So, yeah, I think actually watching your team play at home is something that, you know, we've looked at the last couple of months and really missed. So, yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. And I'm looking forward to it for the players as well, because I spoke about this last week. It's a big reason why you signed for us, right? Playing in a stadium like that and an atmosphere like that, the support. And I think those players will maybe get a bit of a realisation of the club that they're actually at when they go and play at Ibrox and what it means to everyone in the stadium. So, yeah, I am really, really looking forward to it. And let's hope we absolutely batter Dundee in that League Cup fixture.
Fingers crossed. Well, we'll end it on that positive note. Thank you very much to Ross and Tommy for joining us this evening. Thank you very much to everyone in the chat that's contributed as well. If you've enjoyed the content, please do drop us a like. It helps us massively. Also, make sure you subscribe to the TII YouTube channel or on audio platforms if that's where you're listening, whether it's Spotify, Apple Music, etc. Make sure you don't miss out on any of the content we've got coming up. Kyle and the guys will be back during the week on Wednesday, so make sure you return for that one. But thank you very much for joining us. Until next time, goodbye.